Thanks for everybody for attending. I'm Richard Quickie, and Derby's online here. We are with the chapter leadership team. Our agenda is pretty full today. We have Stu Thornley who's online, is going to talk about Hall of Famers, grave sites of the Hall of Famers. He's going to be the first up. And then Mary Shea has joined us, and she's going to speak about women in baseball. Has a nice presentation there. Kyle, you're going to talk about the Joel Sheehan
Let's do it.
thing? Okay, good. And then we're scheduled to have some students from George Washington University come in at 11 o'clock to talk about a project that our chapter sponsored with them to do an analytics project. And so I'll let Justin talk a little bit more about that as we get closer. And then I have Ian O'Doherty and a couple of his family members who are going to speak about, or has a nice video of his great grandfather, Joe Vitter, who was from New Orleans and eventually played in the minor leagues for a number of years. And then I've got a short deal on local high school players that played at the college level this year. All right. Anybody else online that I hadn't want to know any other topics? Anybody else for today? Well, good. I have to make sure I keep checking to see if people are in waiting. Looks like everybody's good. Okay, Stu, you want to tee us off here?
Yeah, hi, Richard. And can you give me the screen sharing
Yep. Let me see.
ability?
Wearing a stocking mask there?
Wait.
Wearing a stocking mask.
Hang on, let me.
I like this guy. It was frozen, literally. Well,
I'm trying to.
that's what a quality erection looks like. I'm saying is, am I getting that right? Make sure it's from that. Yeah.
Okay, you have it now?
Yeah, let's see here.
Okay.
Oops. That coming up?
Let's see. I gotta get back to my technology's great.
The screen share is loading. I don't know what that means.
Okay. I don't have anything yet, so I think that message is related to when I first signed in. I don't.
Trying to let him share.
Yeah. It says, I have a message that says you are screen sharing, so
Stop sharing.
pardon me, stop.
There we go.
Okay,
Okay. Oh, you can see a cemetery?
yep, we got it now. Sorry for my delay.
Okay, no problem. Hey, it works. Yeah, hi. For close to 20 years, I did a lot of cemetery roaming. I still get into cemeteries. I don't walk as well anymore, and what used to be an easy walk appeared to be level ground. You find out with a bad leg that it's not all that even anymore. But I've loved visiting cemeteries, and one of the things I would do for the reason to get to them is have lists of graves to go to. I had checklists, baseball Hall of Famers, presidents, Manson victims, things like that you try to knock off. But it's still about the journey, not necessarily the destination. That you just get into parts of a country, parts of a city that you normally otherwise wouldn't get to. And the cemeteries are often kind of a green space of serenity in an urban setting. And this is one of them. It's Calvary Cemetery in Queens. I love this picture with the Manhattan skyline across the East River in the background. It looks like it's all skyscrapers, and within the foreground of those cemetery markers there. The reason I was there was to get to the graves of these people, a couple of Baseball Hall of Famers, Mickey Welch, and it says Walsh on his, the family name, I guess, was Walsh, but it's Mickey Welch, 19th century pitcher, and Willie Keeler. But I get to all types of baseball graves, so they don't necessarily have to be Hall of Famers. Quite an array. Norm Cash outside Detroit, and Jim Creighton at Greenwood Cemetery, the big cemetery in the middle of Brooklyn. And some people do think that Jim Creighton should be in the Hall of Fame. And then there are the owners, Chris Vandera in St. Louis, Walter O'Malley in Los Angeles. That's a pretty basic marker for Los Angeles. The funny thing is, all of the cemeteries in Los Angeles, all of the celebrities, Hollywood people, and it's fun to walk around a cemetery in Los Angeles because you might be looking for a particular person, and all of a sudden, well, gee, there's James Cagney, there's Bela Lugosi. But so many of them are just really basic markers like Walter O'Malley has there. Back in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn is Charles Ebbets with a more notable big family tombstone. And at the bottom, it's Charlie Finley. You talk about a basic, overgrown, maybe it fit the ball club that he eventually ended up with. That's in Merrillville, Indiana, where he lived. And then the commissioners, two of these are in the Hall of Fame. In the upper left, Happy Chandler, who was a governor, senator, baseball commissioner. In the lower right, Bowie Kuhn, out near, I guess it's in the Hamptons on Long Island, along with a couple of others. William Eckert, a three-star general, is noted there. That's in Arlington Cemetery. He was more prominent for his military career, and as commissioner, he was known as the Unknown Soldier. He had a brief tenure as commissioner, not as brief as Bart Giamatti, who was buried near Yale in New Haven. And umpires, the top two are in the Hall of Fame, Bill McGowan in Wilmington, Delaware, Nestor Shylock in Pennsylvania. And that, look at how cruddy the one of Emmett Ashford is. Notable umpire, and it's near the Hall of Fame. It's in Cooperstown. And the story is that Ashford had wanted to be buried in Cooperstown. He didn't make any arrangements with people there. And one day this box of ashes showed up and they didn't know what to do with it, but they decided they should do something. So they got a marker and got Emmett Ashford buried in the cemetery in Cooperstown. Not that they maintain his tombstone very well. Some people are known better for things other than their playing career. Curt Flood had a good playing career, but he's better remembered as his lawsuit against baseball. And at the bottom, well, that person had a career, but it was the lack of a career that made him notable. Moonlight Graham. And if you've read the book Shoeless Joe, seen the movie, you know that he is prominent up in the Iron Range in northern Minnesota, although he is buried down near the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. Some died young, some didn't. I think that's a record for a Major League Baseball player living to 107. Ooh. And a lot are remembered for how they died. Thurman Munson in a plane crash. Ray Chapman hit by a pitch, beamed and died, the only Major League player to do that. Lyman Bostock, who was shot. He was in a car at this intersection that we see here in Gary, Indiana. And there's other players, several in the minor leagues, who were like Ray Chapman. He got beamed and died. Linus Ebnett. And the Ebnett family in central Minnesota is really big, in amateur baseball too. They even could form in Holdingford. Holdingford is also the hometown of umpire Joe Brinkman, but it's notable for the Ebnett family that could field an entire team of Ebnets. Linus was from the Albany area, and he did play in the minor leagues and was playing for, was in Winnipeg when he was beamed and died. And at the bottom, Peanuts Peterson, one of 4 members of the Duluth Dukes, killed in a bus crash, which is only about a mile from where I'm sitting right now, just down the highway. They were going from Eau Claire to St. Cloud Saturday morning, and the highway just behind me, I don't know if you can see anything, but just up the hill there is the highway. It was a little 2-lane road, and a chemical truck going the other direction crossed the center line, crashed, burned. The driver of the chemical truck also died. But Peanuts Peterson is buried up in Duluth, where he played. Now, some are known a little bit more collectively than they are individually. This double play combination now goes from Orlando, Florida, to Troy, New York, to Los Angeles, California, to Tinker, to Evers, to Chance. And it hit me while I was doing this. I've been to Cincinnati, I've been to cemeteries. I should have gotten the grave of Harry Steinfeld. Harry Steinfeld, the 4th member of that infield. Maybe next time I'm in Cincinnati, I'll get there, but we've got the double play combination. And as far as Hall of Famers go, the initial class, 1936, had 5. Ty Cobb, Walter Johnson is in the top right corner, a little harder to see. Christy Mathewson and Hannes Wagner. Christy Mathewson would have been the first Hall of Fame grave there was, because he was dead by the time he was elected. So in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, outside of where he went to college at Bucknell, there is his grave. And then finally, the other member of that class of Hall of Famers, Babe Ruth, Gate of Heaven Cemetery, Hawthorne, New York, about 20 miles north of New York City. First time I was there, I was just struck by all of the stuff that people left at his grave. And I hadn't come bearing any real gifts or anything, but I felt like I needed to do something. So I went back to my car and got a little notepad and wrote a note on it. And I wrote, "Babe, you're the best," signed it, put an NY symbol on it. And a few years later, somebody said, "Were you at Babe Ruth's grave? Did you leave a note said something like, 'You're the man'?" I said, "Yeah, something like that." And he said, "Well, it's in the Babe Ruth Birthplace Museum in Baltimore." So when I got out there, I went and looked, and there was a nice window display devoted to his death. And apparently the people from the museum had been there to pick up some of the stuff, a couple of notes, a baseball, and it had to be soon after. You can see the note there from me is a little weather beaten, but they picked it up, and it was in a window display. Other offerings people get, not as many as Lou Gehrig, who's in an adjacent cemetery to Babe Ruth, but I thought that was nice, the license plate with the number of his consecutive game streak. And another nice touch, kind of small there, but at Rube Waddell's grave in San Antonio, there was a fire truck. And of course, he was known sometimes for leaving games to go chase fire truck. I just thought that was a nice touch, whoever did that. Rogers Hornsby is in a town, or if you can even call it that, called Hornsby's Bend outside of Austin, Texas. And you have to pass a no trespassing sign, which is never a good idea. I don't know, especially in Texas, it's a little eerie to do that. But you can see a lot of people have done it. A lot of baseballs there and a glove on his grave. So offerings there. And in Greenville, South Carolina, there was some footwear for shoeless Joe Jackson. And there were some other items of apparel for J. Edgar Hoover. Okay, I'm going to keep this to baseball. I don't think Hoover had anything to do with baseball, but we'll be back. I promise. Just only baseball graves from now on. Okay, there's executives, managers, players. That's Ban Johnson in Indiana, Connie Mack just north of Philadelphia, and Cookie Lavagetto, McGillicuddy, or Connie Mack, and Lavagetto, players and managers. Lavagetto may be remembered best as a player. He had the 2-out, 2-run double in the bottom of the ninth to win Game 5 of the 1947 World Series with the first hit of the game off Bill Bevins. He was also the original manager of the Minnesota Twins. What the hell is this one doing in here? I said it was just going to be baseball graves. Gee whiz. Okay, Abner Doubleday is known for a connection with baseball, even though he never knew it because he died in 1893 and didn't know that about 15 years later, his name would be brought up as the creator of baseball and forever associated with the game. He was a general and a notable one. He took command of the First Corps, the Union Army at Gettysburg on the first day of fighting at Gettysburg. So he, like the unknown soldier, William Eckert, is buried at Arlington Cemetery. These are some probably better representations of pioneers of the game. Alexander Cartwright, even though there's a lot of debate and everything about that now. This was 1995, and my wife Brenda and I, this is before I married, but we went to Hawaii, and I was just, well, there's a lot to do in Hawaii, but I threw that on there. Let's get to the cemetery where Alexander Cartwright's buried. And it was my 50th state to get to, and I didn't realize, well, and then the first baseball Hall of Famer that I got to. I didn't realize by completing one list of getting to all the states, I was starting a new list of getting to Hall of Fame graves. But that's Alexander Cartwright in Hawaii, Harry Wright outside Philadelphia, and we're going back to Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, a good place for Henry Chadwick, member of the Hall of Fame, and had so much to do with statistics and with things like that. But these are better pioneers of the game than Abner Doubleday. So many Hall of Famers don't have anything to mark them as Hall of Famers, as even a baseball career. Mordecai Brown and Terre Haute, Roger Bresnahan in Toledo. That's Rube Foster in Blue Island, Illinois, just south of Chicago, Epirixie in Cincinnati. Just basic markers like anybody else, and you wouldn't know how notable they are. Those are even more notable than Morris Badgrove in Kent, Washington. He played baseball, although he's in the Football Hall of Fame. But a very simple marker. The one next to it, you can barely see. If you look on it, there's a number 1395. That's Charles Victory Faust, who pitched for the Giants, was kind of their mascot. And that's in the State Hospital for the Insane outside of Seattle. That's all he got. Roger Connor and George Stacey Davis have nice markers, although not originally. For many years, both of these were in unmarked graves. Connor in Waterbury, Connecticut, and Davis just outside Philadelphia. But there's a lot of people, and particularly SABR, you can see Davis's grave. It even marks it as Society for American Baseball Research put that marker up. There is a landmarks committee now. There are people like Jeremy Kroc, who's done a lot with making sure that Negro Leaguers, pre-Negro Leaguers have gotten markers on their grave. But Roger Connor and George Stacey Davis, just plots of ground. And that's when well, at least with Connor, that's when I got there the first time. And by the time I got back, there was a decent marker for him. But many do have stuff on their graves. Bill Dickey in Little Rock has got his Yankee symbol. Outside Detroit is Hal Newhouser with a few things on it. His nickname, Tiger, and notes that he is a Baseball Hall of Fame member, which is also the case with Johnny Mize in Georgia, along with his, down at the bottom, it says Baseball Hall of Fame. It's like something out of his baseball encyclopedia. Nothing subtle there. This is Fargo. And just in case you didn't know, Fargo is in North Dakota. It's not in Minnesota. That's where Roger Maris grew up. They don't have the original spelling of his name, which is Maras. And Maris, when he got into pro ball, he didn't like the spelling of the name because people were calling him Maras. So they changed it. But the big number associated with him, 61 and 61, is on his grave marker there. William Hulbert in Graceland Cemetery, just a little north of Wrigley Field, has a basic marker, and I don't remember what year, but finally somebody decided that he should have something to note his role in the development of the National League. It took a long time for him to even be elected to the Hall of Fame. They didn't know any better when they started doing the Hall of Fame in the 30s, and they elected Morgan Bulkeley, who was the first president, thinking he must have been the guy who was behind all this. And eventually Hulbert got the recognition that he deserves for what he did. And that's a baseball, granite baseball in front of his grave, and it's got the names of the teams in the National League at that time. And nicknames sometimes will mark the notability of the player. Pie Trainer there, it says Harold, and if you can see right next to it, Pie in Pittsburgh. Sonny Jim Bottomley in Sullivan, Missouri. Meeker, Oklahoma. Carl Hubbell's marker has his nickname, the Meal Ticket, and just right on there, like it's his middle name or part of his name, Jocko Conlon, the umpire in Scottsdale, Arizona. And the Mick, just a great teammate. And this is in a mausoleum in Dallas. And I went back there and later, and hey, what happened to the Mick? Where'd he go? Well, they upgraded him to a better neighborhood, same mausoleum, but they decided that he needed something better. So around the other, you walk around the hallway and come down another one, a little alcove that they put Mickey and his family. His son Billy was already dead, but then his wife Merlin is now in there too, but put up a nice marker for Mickey Mantle in Dallas where he lived. Here we have Wilbert Robinson, John McGraw at the top, Joe Kelly, and Ned Hanlon, members of the Baltimore Orioles of the 1890s. And this is all the same cemetery, New Calvary Cemetery in Baltimore. 4 Hall of Famers, that's a record. I think a few cemeteries have gotten up to 3, but this one has got the record. 4 members of the Hall of Fame in 1 cemetery. Oh yeah, we've got to go to Louisiana. You probably recognize this, Mill Ott in Metairie. And I was taken by how it just looks like a neighborhood there with the mausoleums. I think I crawled up back when I could do such things, crawled up and got on the top of that mausoleum and took a picture there. And then over to the west, Ted Lyons, Bigwood Cemetery. And I don't know if it's Community of Bigwoods or Edgerly, but Ted Lyons is also buried in Louisiana. So you've got us in Minnesota by 2. We don't have any Hall of Fame graves. We're waiting to see if Paul Molitor might be the best candidate, although he's going strong, and that could be a while. Rod Carew's daughter is buried in a Hebrew cemetery in a suburb south of here. I understand there was a kind of a family fight over Kirby Puckett's ashes, and they may be with his children, but have never been interred. So there's a few that'll probably end up in Minnesota. Joe Mauer, but they're probably going to outlive me, so somebody else can come visit those. Some pioneers. Fleet Walker in Steubenville, Ohio. Fleet Walker was the first Black player in the majors, and he played on that Toledo team in 1884 with his brother Welde, who was in an unmarked grave there. I take it that Fleet probably was in an unmarked grave too, until somebody was able to get a marker up for him. And this was also a Society for American Baseball research marker of Bud Fowler near the bottom. He's near Utica. He was born in Cooperstown, which is appropriate. He is often credited as the first Black player in organized baseball. He's noted around here because Stillwater, about 20 miles away, is where he played 1 season in 1884, and they've done a lot with him there. But his grave, that was one I got to in advance. I'd been to before, and then he was eventually added to the or elected to the Hall of Fame a few years ago. And so didn't even have to leave home to add that to my checklist of Hall of Fame graves that I got to. Well, these two men are in the same cemetery in Chicago, and their names are associated either with the creation or the extension of the color line. Pop Anson on the left, and Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And there could be debate about what his role was as commissioner in perpetuating the color line, but both their names are associated with it. They're both in the same cemetery in Chicago. And these are some of the victims of the discrimination who never got a chance in the major leagues. Ray Dandridge, I believe that's a Hall of Fame symbol that went on his mausoleum in Florida. He played here in Minneapolis for several years. In Chicago, Jimmy Crutchfield, and I think that might have been Jeremy Croc's efforts to get markers in some of these cemeteries for players like Crutchfield. And I don't know who put this one up, but they sure said a lot about Cool Papa Bell outside of St. Louis. Now, on the top left is Napoleon Lajoie in Daytona Beach. Right across the road is just a big stone, family name on it of Merkel. And I went and said, couldn't find any individual grave markers that said Fred, but I went to the cemetery office and confirmed that, yeah, right across the road from Lajoie is Fred Merkel. Well, they had never heard of Fred Merkel, but they just confirmed that it was him. And they had never heard of Napoleon Lajoie. And I'm saying, you got a big Hall of Famer here, great player. And they didn't really seem to care. That kind of bothered me. That was my last grave of the day. And I think I drove up near Jacksonville, stayed overnight. And wow, they don't even care about having a great player in their cemetery like that. So I felt a lot better the next morning. We went to the cemetery where Bill Terry is in a mausoleum, an outdoor mausoleum. And I got there real early, and cemeteries might have specific hours. And I got in there before they had officially opened, but the gates were open. Usually when the sun's up, you can do that. And parked and got out with my little map, and cemetery worker saw me and maybe was suspicious. What am I doing in here so early? But he perked up when I said, no, I'm looking for where Bill Terry is buried. And the guy, oh, okay, yeah, right this way, follow me. And he then kind of almost like hitched up his pants and said with a real note of pride, I put him in there. And I love that. After getting to the cemetery where they didn't know or care about a Hall of Famer, this guy took some pride in his work. So I enjoyed that. That was a good start to the day to see Bill Terry's grave. I was getting to the point of wondering if I can ever get to all the Baseball Hall of Fame graves. And one was buried in Cuba, Martin Digo. And didn't have much information, said Cienfuegos. Well, that's a big city right on the Caribbean. But Kit Krieger, SABR member, started his Cuba Ball trips in 2001. And he had a notice on SABR L inviting people to go to Cuba for a baseball trip, go to games, go do this and that. And I emailed him right away and I said, we'd like to go, but do you know where Martin Digo is? Because I'd really like to get to his grave. And he said, I will find out and we'll schedule one of our games to go to in Cienfuegos and we'll get to his grave. But before we did that, on our first day, we got to the big cemetery in Havana that has two monuments called to baseballists. And the one on the left has the names of a lot of people. Jose Mendez is on there. And Mendez was not yet in the Hall of Fame. He was part of the group a few years later, where I think it was 16 Negro Leaguers, pre-Negro Leaguers were buried. And he was in this one. In fact, it was hard to read because there was nothing in the lettering. It was just white marble or whatever it was. And we, as a group, threw in a bunch of money, and Kit was able to get somebody to go in there. And I don't know how they filled it in, but I went back there later and you could read the names later. We thought at the time that Cristobal Torriente was in there too, but as it turns out, he's somewhere else. But that's the one Hall of Famer in this monument. The monument on the right doesn't have any Hall of Famers in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame, but it does have some Cuban Hall of Famers. And as we went around to the back of this, hey, the gate's open. And this is where all the ossuaries or receptacles for bones were. And somebody got really excited because he knew Augustine Molina, Tinte Molina. I think he was a manager. He's in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame and is quite notable. What's interesting about this picture is the receptacle above it that's got its side broken out, and you can see how they inter people in Cuba. They don't have a lot of room. I guess it's for the most part, they wait for the body to decompose, scrape off the bones, and put them in one of these boxes. And this one happened to be visible because the side was broken out. And no, nobody took a souvenir home with them. We had enough trouble getting back in the United States. We got intercepted by the authorities, and I'm glad they didn't find any contraband of bones of anybody in it. But we did get on our final full day there, we got to Cruces, the town in Cienfuegos. Digo's son was there. With the townspeople welcomed us. They brought us to their community center, and they had performances of dance and everything else. And then they all got on the bus with us and headed out to the cemetery. And that's Martin Digo. I mean, heck, you could look at that. This box of bones is right there. Anybody could walk in and take it. But so we got to Martin Digo. So okay, I'm at about 140 Hall of Fame graves now, and I figure I can get to the rest. There's about 40 more to go. And I mapped out a plan for to get around to all the other graves, and in there was I'm going to stick in Cuba here for a second, although this is actually New York. Toriente, I mentioned, who was elected along with Jose Mendez in late 2006. Ralph Carhart, who's visited all of the graves too, along with his hall ball, a ball that he found in Cooperstown, and he wrote hall ball on it. And he took it around to all of the graves. He was the one that discovered that Toriente is in Calvary Cemetery, that one I first showed you in Queens. And so when we had our official scores meetings out there, my wife and another score and we flew into JFK Airport and got in a cab, go to our hotel in Manhattan. But I asked the driver, would you take us to a cemetery in Queens first? And I thought he might be a little leery of it. But he was into it. He was very much into it and took us there. And there's a temporary marker up there that Ralph Carhart arranged for the cemetery to do. And he wants to get a permanent one in there. They need family permission, and that's a problem. But as I had about 40 graves left to go and was starting to chug them off, well, doggone it, people keep dying. I was in Pittsburgh and I got the news Lou Boudreau had died. And I went, oh, gee, now I got to get to another grave. Well, I found out it was going to be just outside Chicago, which is a day trip for me, not too tough to get to. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to go to his funeral. So I drove down there and did all of that. Bob Feller was there. And so I stopped at the grave marker first and saw that and went for the service, went back to the cemetery. They buried him, a nice floral arrangement with his number, went back and had a free lunch. So I got that one done. So I was in good shape by the following January. I did one more trip to LA, got to a bunch of graves, and ended up on a Saturday morning, Santa Barbara, the Pacific Ocean at my back, and stared at the grave of Eddie Matthews, who had died while we were on our Cuba ball trip. That was at the time 184 Hall of Famers had graves. There were some who been cremated and not interred anywhere, but I had completed the list with Eddie Matthews. But they just keep dying, so you got to get out and do it again. Enos Slaughter in North Carolina, George Kell in Northern Arkansas, Barney Dreyfuss in Pittsburgh, and in Los Angeles, Effa Manley. And she was one of the 16 who were elected to the Hall of Fame. And I hustled and I kind of caught up. I don't remember what the number was. It was well over 200, but I got current again. But then again, they just keep dying. When I've gotten to some of them, Ernie Banks, Yogi Berra in New Jersey, Jim Bunning, Fort Kent, Kentucky, just outside Cincinnati. And this is Bobby Dorr, the only Hall of Famer in Oregon, somewhere between Corvallis and Eugene. So I'm still short some. I don't know if I'll ever get current again, but sometimes I like to be proactive and even get to the graves before anybody is in them. So, and this is one, it will eventually have 2 people and maybe 3 or 4 cats inside it. It's a cremation plot, which maybe you can figure out, you know, to get a full body in there, you'd really have to tamp it down real hard. But to get some urns in there of cats and 2 people. But Brenda and I got our own grave at Lakewood Cemetery in Minneapolis because I love that place too. And we even, different picture, Brenda was in it. We posed by it and we used that as our holiday card photo one year. So that is the tour of Hall of Fame and other graves, almost all baseball graves. I don't know if anybody has any questions you'd like to ask.
So you got Whitey Herzog, right? He's in the Hall of Fame, right?
Oh, yeah.
Coming up.
Yes, and I don't even know where he's going to be. Oh, I do have. I put it in the chat. If anybody wants to get that link, it's to my Hall of Fame gravesite website. A lot of people have helped me with it, and especially with getting coordinates for GPS, longitude, latitude. And I put Whitey Herzog in the not yet known category. But yeah, Whitey is the latest Hall of Famer. I think my number that I've been to is now 226, and maybe there's 235 or something like that. I don't think I'm ever going to catch up with it. But yeah, you're right, Richard. Whitey Herzog is the latest one in there.
I think he's probably gonna be out in Ladue. He lived out in Ladue, a suburb of St. Louis.
Okay, so, and
Yeah.
I do have to get to Red Schoendienst down there too. That's, St. Louis isn't too far from us. So maybe I can.
So you got a lot of frequent flyer miles, I guess. huh?
I did. In fact, I was at the point where for a couple of years I was in the Northwest Airlines Silver Elite, which back at that time would often get you bumped up to first class. And then it was also, as long as I can fly in style, I'll do a lot of trips. And
Yep.
But a lot of miles, but probably most of them it's flying, get a rental car, have a good organized list of where to go.
Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate your
I'm-
appreciate the journey here, documenting it.
I'm curious, do you do any anticipating that, you have Kurt Flood, you have Roger Maris, and you could say, well, one of the special committees could one day put them in the Hall of Fame? Are you kind of looking for like Dick Allen or something like that, saying, okay, let me get him if it's convenient, because he might get in.
Yes, exactly. Good question. And the answer is yes. And Bismarcky in Los Angeles, I think on one of these trips when I was in LA, and Larry Lester was advising me on some of the players he thought might make it. When that committee elected 16 Negro League Hall of Famers, I think I had already been at 2, and I've got to think of who they are, but one more was Bismarcky, and that was a preemptive one too, that Larry Lester had, because he knew there was probably going to be an election like this, and he said, here's one to go to. So thanks to Larry, I had that one and didn't have to make another trip to Los Angeles. And there's several now in San Francisco area. I don't know. I have been to Joe DiMaggio's, but Willie McCovey is out there now in the Bay Area. So there's a few clusters to get to, but yeah, trying to figure out. You're right, Dick Allen. I'm not even sure where he's buried, but the others that you mentioned, if they get elected to the Hall of Fame, I've already got them.
All right, let's wrap up, because we need to move on to our next topic. Thanks again, Stu. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation,
Really
Richard.
informative. Yeah, appreciate it. Let's see, Mary, I'm going to try to get you in here next. Again, need to share your screen. Let's see. How did I do this before?
She needs to share.
Oh, she needs, okay. Happen. Hang on, Mary, just a minute.
Okay, it says you are sharing screen. And for some reason, the PowerPoint keeps closing up. So
I see, I got you now. Okay.
you got it?
Yep. Very good.
Okay, as long as you can see it. I'm at the PowerPoint, so
Yep.
okay, let's get going. We're so I'm Mary Shea. Thank you to the Schott-Pelican chapter.
Wait,
I'm
let
sorry.
me get my picture off here. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
What did I do here?
Yeah, I definitely see you.
Yeah. Right.
Richard, I think that's on her screen. Yeah, she's gonna.
Oh, I got you.
She's gonna hit from slide 1.
Can you, I think I'm on your screen. Can you hide me or?
What should I do?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you can see my slideshow. You don't need to see me talking. So well, thank you, Schott-Pelican, for having me. I don't know if Jim Copeland is there. He's a good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Jim. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the attendees for enduring my woman in baseball shtick. So we're just going to take a really brief fly through a little history of women in baseball, pretty much focusing on players. And we'll definitely talk about the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So pretty much from the beginning, women have played baseball as long as there's been baseball, and the precursors to baseball, especially rounders, which was a children's game. So they were playing late 1700s, early, definitely through the 1800s. A lot of people, especially SABR members, have probably heard of the Vassar Resolutes. So, doing research, it's what you find in newspapers, and definitely women were playing in the Seven Sisters colleges. So Vassar actually had 2 teams. And I think they also played Smith. And so there's definitely college baseball going on. Eventually there were bloomer girl teams in the late 1800s, not really very competitive. Maybe some of them were good players. So some of you might have heard of blondes and brunettes. That was mostly a burlesque sort of thing. But the Dolly Vardens were an all-black team that probably played some pretty good ball. I like to mention Maud Nelson because she was so influential. I think she should be in the Hall of Fame, but she pitched, played third base, scouted, owned, and managed bloomer teams. So these bloomer teams were basically barnstorming teams. They'd go from town to town and challenge, semi-pro teams or the town team. So, and these women were good players. A lot of the bloomer girl teams, not only Maud Nelson's teams, but other teams, they would have 2 to 3 male players, and they would often switch batteries with the other team. So the woman pitcher and the catcher would play for the men's team, and the men's battery would play for the women's team. So, and just kind of interesting, Smokey Joe Wood and Rogers Hornsby kind of got their start playing on bloomer girl teams. I like to mention Lizzie Arlington. She's some of these people we could spend a lot of time talking about, but the first woman to sign a minor league contract. Again, not just, some of these women were like kind of a circus act, but a lot of these women could really play. And Lizzie was definitely one of them. Maybe some of you have heard of Alta Weiss. She was really interesting. So she started in the early 1900s. She got really interested in pitching, and her father was really supportive of her, built a gym for her, and she grew up in Ragersville, Ohio. And I guess the correct name is Alta Wise. So, And here it just mentions a little bit about her. So her father formed this team to play around her, and they barnstormed. They ended up playing in League Park in Cleveland, and she drew pretty well, was a very good pitcher. Interestingly, she took her earnings and attended, I think it was the Sterling Medical School. It was the Ohio State, now it's Ohio State Medical School. And she became a doctor in Ragersville. Lizzie Murphy was another trailblazer, first woman to play in a major league exhibition game. So you'll see a woman, these players like Alta Wise, she played in a long dress and then eventually in the bloomers. So the bloomers were designed for women to play sports, but still have the appearance of playing in a dress. And if you looked at Alta Wise, she definitely had the bloomers, but some of the women eventually developed into the regular baseball uniforms. Again, elite teams like the New York Bloomer Girls, the Philadelphia Bobbies, really an interesting, again, we could talk a lot about them because they were girls, I mean, really pretty young girls who traveled around, and not many of them were very good, but one player in particular was very good, their star shortstop. And she loved playing baseball. She would play softball, but really preferred to play baseball. In fact, she eventually joined the Navy and played for the Navy team, and also became a part-time scout for the Philadelphia Phillies. Margaret Gisolo, again, these women, I think she just wanted to play with her brother, and she ended up being the star player on her team. American Legion ball. So she played, I think, in Comiskey Park. They played a championship, and after that, I think Kennesaw Mountain Landis banned girls from playing American Legion ball, which stood until the 1970s. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, Margaret Gisolo played for Maud Nelson's team. So Maud Nelson kind of keeps interweaving into the history of women's baseball. A lot of you might have heard about Jackie Mitchell because the anniversary, they kind of talk about it. So apparently she lived near Dazzy Vance as a young girl and maybe picked up his screwball. She was left-handed. She could really pitch. So this is always debated whether it was legit or a stunt. So she pitched. The New York Yankees were playing a barnstorm, they would barnstorm from spring training up to New York, and they played the Chattanooga Lookouts. In the middle of the game, they brought Jackie Mitchell in. She struck out Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig back to back. She then walked Tony Lazzari and then was taken out of the game. Again, there's a debate, was she legit or was it just a stunt that the Yankees participated in? But nonetheless, she was a good pitcher. She ended up pitching for other barnstorming teams for the House of David. A lot of you have heard with the Beards and everything, and they were very good teams. Again, Maud Nelson, the All-Star Ranger Girls. And we mentioned Margaret Gisolo played for the Ranger Girls. Rose Gottschalk was a great player, and she eventually played in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So the continuity of it. So just a little bit about softball. Softball was invented by men, I forget what year, in the early 1900s, so that they could play baseball indoors. This was in Chicago. Somehow they thought softball was a better sport for women to play, that it was less dangerous for them. That was a constant concern. So a lot of girls and women were pushed into playing softball in the 1930s. And that's what we have, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So we always compare it to A League of Their Own, the movie that came out in 1992. And a lot of the players in the All-American Girls said the movie was about 80% true. So Penny Marshall, the director, had seen a documentary about the All-American Girls I think it was a PBS documentary, and that got her all charged up to create the movie. So that brings us to the idea, why did Philip Wrigley, who was the owner of the Chicago Cubs, during World War II, they needed bodies to come to the ballpark there, and especially the minor leagues were decimated. So, and they had seen that women's softball, there was professional softball, especially in the Chicago area, that was drawing pretty well. So they had the idea that they would scout these women, mostly who played softball, but a lot of these women played both baseball and softball. They played baseball with the boys as they grew up, and but eventually were pushed into softball to play competitive ball. So you see here Bob Feller, Hank Greenberg, a lot of the star players had to go into fighting in World War II. So in 1943, they developed the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League is the name it has now. It started out as the All-American Girls Softball League. It had a few different names, but we'll go with the AAG PBL. There were 4 original teams. And this is a good graphic because this is from the AAG PBL website, and it just gives you an idea. So in the movie A League of Their Own, I mean, we could talk an hour about that movie because there's a lot going on. There's actually a new book called No Crying in Baseball that's excellent if you want to read just more about the making of the movie. In the movie, they show that they were pushed into playing baseball pretty much right away, but it actually developed over the years. So here you get a great idea of how they started out as basically softball teams, but with some baseball rules, you know, with leadoffs and stealing bases. They wanted to make a more exciting softball game, and eventually it transitioned into baseball. So you see in 1954, it's just about, you know, the 90 feet between the bases, you know, very close. And the women loved it. A lot of the women who they liked playing with a baseball. I mean, if you can imagine, smaller hands, and they could really whip that thing. And so I think a lot of players were thrilled to transition over into full baseball. Some of the pitchers, there was a star pitcher named Connie Wisniewski, who was an excellent softball pitcher, but never really developed as an overhand pitcher, but she was still a very good player. This just gives you an idea of the teams over the years. So this is, you know, before TV. And, you know, we definitely know in the 1950s, even the Yankees had trouble drawing. So once people could watch things on TV. But they did well in smaller towns. So they tried playing here. I live in Milwaukee. They won the championship in 1944, but only played that 1 year and then moved to Grand Rapids. Chicago, they only really lasted 1 year, but they did very well in the smaller towns, especially Rockford. Just a quick look at the uniforms. The uniforms on the left are the colored uniforms. Those would be road uniforms, those different pastel colors. The home uniforms would be the white uniforms on the right. So I thought I'd just put this in because, again, they had to play in these dresses, which was ridiculous. And they did slide, they did steal bases, but here you see an example of one of the strawberries. They called them strawberries when you slid into the dirt. And if you've ever slid on the gravel, you get some pretty nasty scabs and wounds. Players would describe that they'd often draw the chalk lines using a lye compound, and you get that lye in a wound, and it was pretty nasty. So rules and etiquette, they definitely, especially at the beginning of the league, they definitely had rules on makeup, how to comport yourself. They took charm school and Helena Rubinstein in Chicago. Over the years later, they definitely relaxed those, but they said they always had chaperones. Here's just a poster advertising, giving you an idea of the advertising for baseball. I'm going to just go through a few of the star players that are notable. Sophie Kerr is, I mean, you can see right there, stole 201 bases and 203 attempts. She was, I think, called Tina Cobb, or, the Ty Cobb of the All-American girls. One of the best players was Dottie Kamenchek, Dorothy Kamenchek. Her nickname was Cammy. There were major league, I think Casey Stengel and other major league coaches and players seeing her play thought she was a major league caliber first baseman. Just excellent defensively. If she played, there were thoughts, should she play in the major leagues? But she probably wouldn't have had enough power to play, a corner infield position. But just an outstanding player. Jean Fault, one of my favorite players. She passed away somewhat recently, but you'd see her at reunions, and just an incredible player. So probably the best overhand pitcher in the league. As far as I know, she is the only professional pitcher that I can find who has pitched 2 perfect games. So pretty incredible. And she was also a good hitter. I always like to mention Annabelle Lee, just because she was a good left-handed pitcher, and her nephew, also a lefty. Of course, Bill Spaceman Lee pitched in the majors. So that's just kind of a cool connection. I wanted to mention Tony Ann Palermo, sister Tony Ann Palermo. We were hoping to have her speak with us. Unfortunately, she just passed away. Just an incredible person. Of course, Jim Copeland has met her and knows what an amazing person she is. She's an interesting story because she played on, they had 2 barnstorming teams. So Sister Tony started playing very young. So she was too young to play in the regular league. And for public relations purposes, they had 2 teams, the Chicago Colleens and the Springfield Sallies, travel around and barnstorm. And in fact, they played a game before the game at Yankee Stadium. So Sister Tony was in the dugout, the Yankees dugout, and met Yogi Berra and Phil Risotto, all the Yankee greats of, this is in 1950. So she got to play with Phil Rizzuto's glove. I mean, doesn't this happen to everybody? So it's just a very cool story. So I wrote a bio on Sister Tony that we included in our Ken Keltner chapter newsletter. If you want to dig that up, at the end, I'll put my email in the chat if anybody would like me to send it to them. It's also going through Bioproject Limbo, fact checking and editing, and I'm hoping it'll be on the National SABR website. She's a fascinating story. Again, we don't have time to go through her, but hopefully you can read the bio. And then just real quickly, we'll go through the progression after the All-American girls. So Toni Stone is, again, another great story. There's a book called Curveball that is a real great read. And she integrated let's just go back here. She not integrated, but the first woman to play Negro League baseball. So this is toward the end of the Negro Leagues. Oddly enough, she replaced Hank Aaron, who had played second base the year before he was signed with the Braves. Again, a really legit player, but she was 10 years older than they said she was. So it's too bad it was past her prime. And this guy, we have a quote from this guy. So you can read that. She played for the New Orleans Creoles, very good semi-pro team. And then eventually played for the Kansas City Monarchs and played in the Bay Area as well. So she played, she plays Hank Aaron. She played against some pretty great players, Satchel Paige, Ernie Banks when he's coming up, Willie Mays. She got a hit off of Satchel Paige. And there were 2 other women who played for the Negro Leagues. Mamie Peanut Johnson, she wanted to try out for the All-American girls. So just to mention on that, they would give them sham tryouts, but wouldn't let them play, really. There was a color line definitely in the All-American girls, which is really unfortunate. A lot of the players say they should have let them play. And then Connie Morgan, also very good player. I mean, these were legit players, even though they might have been sort of a stunt to keep the Negro Leagues going. So then, just to mention, 1970s, girls were banned from playing Little League. A girl named Maria Pepe, who wanted to play with her brother, eventually there was a lawsuit that she won. And now we have girls who are allowed to play in Little League. At least they can play organized, the precursor of organized baseball. So, there was a guy named Bob Hope, not the thanks for the memories, Bob Hope, but a major league executive who had the idea of making an all-women's professional team, a minor league team. He actually hired Henry Aaron to be the director of player personnel. And this is just a nice quote from Henry Aaron, thinking, yeah, baseball is mostly a skill sport and they can probably play baseball. So the debate is, should women play with men? There are a lot of women who are doing that because that's all they can do. But maybe it's better to have a women's league like the WNBA. So let's just go real quickly here. It's just some trailblazers first, playing for college teams for the first time. Huge deal. Jolie Croteau is an excellent first baseman. She also played for the Colorado Silver Bullets. And some of you might remember them. They were, again, we're back to the barnstorming. They were a barnstorming team subsidized by the Coors Brewing Company. They played men's like semi-pro teams. So again, this is kind of like the 1930s, the Bloomer Girls. They eventually lost their funding. But Phil Necro, you can see in the center, he was very much involved and managed the team in the beginning. Joe Necro was involved. And a lot of these women had to transition from softball to baseball, again, transitioning from a different sport, which is pretty difficult. But at least it was, women got to be on a team together. Isla Borders was unfortunately just way ahead of her time because I think she could have pitched in the major leagues. Just all she wanted was an MLB tryout. So there's a great book called something about slouching toward Fargo, I think it is. And it's about, yeah, you had got it? Yeah. It's a fun book about the St. Paul Saints and just the craziness that went on there. And Isla Borders was part of that. Mike Cuellar was her pitching coach in Duluth. And he would call her from, she was in the bullpen. So he would, instead of pointing to his left arm, of course, Isla Borders was a crafty left-hander. He would do an hourglass figure sort of hand gesture to call her from the bullpen, which is kind of funny. So, and just a few other characters that are just amazing. Ari Yoshida was from Japan, saw on TV Tim Wakefield pitching with a knuckleball. So she taught herself how to pitch using a knuckleball. And if you think, well, if women get into the major leagues, it would probably be somebody with a trick pitch. So again, I think she was the first woman to play in 3 different countries professionally. A lot of you have heard of Monet Davis, just a great story. And unfortunately, she got older and she wanted a scholarship. There are no women's baseball teams. They're starting club teams, but no women's college baseball teams. So these women have to play either with men with no scholarship, they don't get scholarships, or play softball. Monet Davis has gone on to play softball in college. I wanted to mention real briefly the Women's Baseball World Cup, which is this July 28th through August 3rd. A lot of people don't know this exists, which is just shameful because there are national teams from all over the world. The US, Japan actually has the powerhouse team because they have a 4-team professional league, or did. I don't know what the status is after COVID. They started playing a Women's Baseball World Cup in 2004. The US won the first one. The US has won a few gold medals, but like I said, Japan is really a powerhouse. But the team they have now, I think it's too bad that ESPN doesn't show the games, at least the World Cup finals that are happening this summer, you'd be amazed at the level of play. I mean, these women aren't, it's not like the catchers bouncing the ball into second base, trying to catch somebody's steal. They play excellent ball. They play on a full diamond, 90 feet between the bases. And if you get a chance to see them, you can see YouTube videos. And also there's an app called Game Time that I think you pay a few bucks and you get to watch the games. But I will be in Thunder Bay, Ontario at the end of July, early August to root for the U.S. women's team. And also Team Mexico has an insanely good shortstop, and of course, Team Japan. So I just want to mention a few organizations that I'll put my email in the chat if anybody would like to contact me with any questions, or these are fun things that you can explore. A lot of times I meet people, they're like, my daughter plays Little League, and but they're the only girl. Baseball for All is a tremendous organization. If you know a girl playing Little League baseball, or even high school baseball, I think there are at least 1,000 girls playing high school baseball. And there's even a few women playing college baseball and professionally. So there's a woman who's on the national team who will be playing for the Oakland Ballers. She'll be pitching. She's a tremendous two-way player. She can hit balls over the fence and also pitch. I think she has a pretty cool knuckle curve that she kind of helped Julio Teheran with before he re-entered Major League Baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers. So yeah, definitely Baseball for All is a good resource for anyone who knows girls playing baseball. And then just a few sources. There are more than these, but there are some really tremendous books. I also highly recommend Isla Borders' biography, Making My Pitch. So that's just a really good read. So I think that'll do it. And if there are any questions, otherwise I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you for listening.
Wait, there's one question. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Pardon me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, are you familiar with, there's, in 2016, there's a baseball team called the Sonoma Stompers. It's like a
Yes.
Indian League team that had the ladies as the battery, like the pitcher and the catcher.
So there were 3 women who played. So I mentioned Kelsey Whitmore. She was signed.
Right.
She was very young. And then
That's
the
what
battery
reminded
was,
me of it.
yeah, Stacy Piagno was the pitcher, and Anna Kimbrell, who's a wonderful person, is the catcher. Was the catcher. So that was a few years ago. Yeah. And he,
Did you ever, did you ever read the book that's about, that's chronicled in?
what was the book called?
The book is called The Only Rule Is It Has to Work.
No, I haven't.
It's two of my favorite baseball writers were like the general manager of that team that year. Like the team gave them full control of the team. And just so happened that was what happened during that year when they were running it.
Oh, I'll have to check. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a really great read.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, just really cool. And Francis Ford Coppola was an owner, right? And I think he had an aunt that played baseball, and that kind of motivated him to do this. So that's as little as I know. So yeah, so I said, like I said, Kelsey Whitmore is playing for the Oakland Ballers, which is kind of notable because they're kind of challenging the Oakland A's. And then Olivia Pichardo is going to be, I think she's going to be pitching, another two-way player. Olivia Pichardo is the first woman to play Division I baseball. She plays for the Brown University, and she was a walk-on her freshman year. And she'll be playing for the Du Bois County Bombers, they play at League Stadium in Huntingburg, Indiana. And that was one of the ballparks that was in the movie A League of Their Own. And also nearby in Evansville, Indiana, there's Bosie Field, another really cool old ballpark. And that was also in the movie. So thanks for mentioning that.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
One, is it common in other countries to push girls into playing softball rather than baseball, or is it more common to find women's baseball teams and leagues in other countries?
That's a good question because there are both. So there's still a lot of organizationally, a lot of girls are still kind of pushed into softball, especially for high school and college. You know, obviously the differences in physiologically, you know, men definitely have more testosterone and body mass. And that's when they tend to push girls into softball. But a lot of these girls are playing Little League and but they're more supported. Like even in Canada, they support girls baseball more. Japan, they definitely do. Australia, they definitely support girls baseball a lot more. In the United States, as far as I know, it's not as well supported. So again, they're trying to start club teams in college, but they're kind of left to like just take vacation time and pay for their own travel and get together and practice on their own. So yeah, there are other countries that support it more, but still the same issues.
And my other question is, I understand there's a museum or Hall of Fame or something planned for Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah, I
Are
had
you
put
involved with that?
I am not officially, but definitely supportive and involved. I'm a good friend of the people who are running it. So that's the International Women's Baseball Center. It is not quite, it's taking years and years to get the capital to build it. So, but they do a lot of other good things. So I recommend checking out their website. One thing that's, so if you go to Rockford, go to Buyer Stadium. That's the historic old ballpark where the woman played, but the grandstands, they just have newer, it's been, you know, the grandstands were torn down years ago, but they refurbished the field. It's a beautiful field. They still have the old ticket window. And they also have like a little outdoor museum. So there's definitely lots of plaques and things that you can go and visit. They're hoping to have more of a museum, not only a museum, but a baseball center where they can hold tournaments. So hopefully like the women's national team and Baseball for All has a big tournament every year, at least one. There's the Maria Pepe tournament. So they'd like to have more tournaments there so that it's like a hotbed for girls and women's baseball. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
Any more questions? We need to move on in our schedule here.
Yeah, sorry if I'd run on. Yeah.
Hi, Mary, this is Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, a couple of things. The movie depicts the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame does not really have, per se, a wing for the women, do they?
They have, so I've been to I think they call it Diamond Dreams. They have a nice little area for women's baseball. And they have like Alta Wise's playing uniform. They have stuff on the All-American girls. There are no plaques. So a lot of these, so they were honored. I forget what year it was. They were honored by the Hall of Fame, I think in the late 80s. And they have a plaque with all the names of the players who played for the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, but these women don't have plaques. So like Stu did that fantastic gravesite presentation. The only woman in the Hall of Fame is F. Manley, the owner of the Newark Eagles.
And then the other thing is I would encourage anybody who's interested, check out Mary's contribution on the Kim Keltner site, SABR site.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I feel fortunate they let me do that. So, but thanks for reading that and take care, Jim. I hope all is well with you and your family.
We'll talk.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Just to release our screen from the,
Yeah.
you have to close your screen to
I'll close up.
stop
Yeah.
share. Okay.
I think you can press stop video maybe.
Where is it?
Off, but-
Where is
Okay,
it?
I'm just pushing stop shares. There we go.
Okay.
Is that better?
And this Scott then.
Yeah, Scott is online right here.
Yeah, I can start sharing my screen if
Okay.
now it's good.
So Justin, we introduce
Yeah,
this while we're
yeah.
waiting.
Good segue, but yeah, I thought the previous presentation was good. You'll have to find the next Caitlin Clark, the basketball player. She played against guys in the league in high school. So, but this is Scott, Kim, and Naga. They're students at George Washington University. So Richard and I have been sponsoring an analytics project with them. So there's a recent rule change, the pitch clock, really sped up the game. They got some information on that. And then the debate was fan experience versus pitcher injuries and they even get into performance. So Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We can go ahead. Kim, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's start our presentation. And hi everyone, we are Group 5, and today our presentation is about the impact of the MLB pitch clock. And so, before let's first come to understand the problem we want to discover. So the pitch clock was introduced in MLB to address the slow pace of play and in order to decreasing time between pitches, action games, and release of games. A year since its implementation, the pitch clock has sparked a lively debate among fans, players, and pundits. So there are some advocates think its success in speeding up the game and influencing a brisk tempo, which align well with the contemporary demand for fast-paced sport entertainment. And on the contrary, detractors express concerns about this new rule. They argue that the imposition of strict time constraints to pressure pitchers and batters, which potentially impacting the quality of play. And therefore, they come with a central issue, which is what is the actual impact of the pitch clock? Okay, so before I introduce our executive summary, I would like to explain the pitch clock rule for you. So the new rule of the pitch clock in MLB for 2023 are straightforward. Pitchers have 15 seconds to throw a pitch with base empty and 20 seconds with runner on base. There is a 30-second timer between batters, and the pitcher must begin his motion to pitch before the timer expires, or else the batter get an automatic ball. And similarly, the batter must be ready by an 8-second mark, or an automatic strike is called. And there are also some specific warrants for pitcher and batter timeouts and disengagement per plate appearance. Okay, after I explain the rules, I would like to introduce the 4 executive points. So the first one, fan engagement. We find that we want to find the changes in fan experience, such as in-game attendance and TV readings. And due to our analysis, we find that fans were not dissatisfied with the entertainment product. And then the game length. It is obviously that we find the game length actually reduced due to the introduction of pitch clock. And also the pitcher injury. We want to say any relevance of the pitch clock with the pitcher injuries. And based on our analysis, we find the injury of pitchers are not solely related to the pitch clock. And the last point is pitcher performance. We would like to say, is there any improvement of the pitcher performance due to the pitch clock? And we finally find that the pitcher performance is not inhibited by the pitch clock. And here, let me invite Naga to talk into details.
Yeah. Hi, this is Naga. In order to more fully analyze the impact of timers on MLB games, we collected and analyzed fan participation data. Use the number of fan participation in 2021 and 2022 to compare with 2023. We drew the histogram about to illustrate. As can be seen in the figure, the number of fan participation in 2021 is at least about 45 million. Although the number of participation in 2022 has increased from 2021, but there is still a significant difference in 9 million in participation rate compared to 2023. Even though there is an effect in COVID in 2021 and 2022, we can definitely say that fans were satisfied with the product. Next slide.
2021, well, we started in 2021 because 2020 was COVID shortened, so it would throw a lot of the numbers off. And then I think you'd see it in the attendance, 2021, there was some hesitation to get back in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, that was interesting. Go ahead.
And we have also analyzed after implementing the pitch clock timer whether that game length time is reduced or not, because many fans were complaining about that and they are leaving the grounds before the match was getting finished. So, and we came to a conclusion that the game length of the MLB game is significantly reduced to 2 hours 42 2.42 hours from something like 3 hours 10 minutes and 3 hours 20 minutes. So we can definitely say that after implementing the pitcher clock, the average game length has been decreased, and which gave more engagement with the fans, which we have seen in the prior slides. So I feel they were satisfied with the product. And after this, we also want to know whether the players are getting injured after implementing this rule. But even though if we see the mild injuries were not that much increased when compared to 2021 to 2021, 2022 to 2023, and moderate injuries were also the same. Now, we have a small growth in severe injuries, even though we have, but it's not that significant to tell that these injuries happen only due to the pitch clock, because there have been many other factors as well, right? So according to our analysis, we cannot say that these injuries happen only due to the pitch clock timer.
Yeah, yeah. And when you see past here, this blue is an average of the past 2 years. So that's what we meant by that. So thank you for that background info.
Yeah.
Actually, one more slide here.
Yeah, and we also compared the pitch tempo between the past 2021 and 2022 to the present 2023. In the past, we don't have any pitcher rule, and we have compared when the bases are empty and when a player is on base. When we see when no players are in any other base, we can see a significant decrease in 3.2 seconds in pitch tempo. And when we compare when a player is on base, we can see a significant 5-second difference between pitch tempo, which we can say that from this slide we can say that the game length has been decreased as pitch tempo has been decreased, which everything made a significant effect and make the game engaging.
Yeah, thank you. So that was good. We can all see that, these last few slides gave a good amount of background info showing us that, the effects of the pitch clock, it did decrease game time. It did decrease time to throw the pitch. So what we wanted to do here, sort of the point of our class, is to do a little bit more of an analytics dive into it. So we'll try and keep it, understandable in that, we don't need to show every method we tried, but we have a few that worked out and we thought were really exciting. So to start, we did a method called clustering.
Clustering first.
Yes. So what clustering is essentially we took the attributes of every player. So, we all know ERA and we all know how many walks a pitcher allows. And I think by now everyone sort of knows that the WAR statistic exists, wins above replacement. So we sort of took all of those stats, we had about 30 different stats about each different pitcher, and we chose 285 pitchers. They were the ones that pitched in all 3 years, so we had enough data on them. And what we did is there's sort of an analytics method, something we've learned in school, where it looks at each of those attributes and it can group them based off of who they are most similar to, based off of their performance and those statistics. So off of that, we grouped them into 5 different groups. And this is solely based off of their pitch tempo, so how fast they were throwing the ball, or how much they had to adjust from when the pitch clock was introduced. So we sort of invented our own statistic as to show how long it used to take them to throw the ball, and now with the pitch clock, it takes them, obviously shorter because they have to hurry it up a bit. No waiting around to throw the ball. And then also all of their player statistics are involved here. So what you can see here is the first 2 of the 5 clusters. This purple cluster here, we call the pitch quick, allow runs quick cluster. So this is sort of the Adam Wainwright, Carlos Carrasco type pitchers. They didn't really take a long time to throw the ball because, they've been in the league a while. They're mature, they're veterans. They don't waste time, dilly-dallying on the mound. They throw the ball quick. But unfortunately for them, they allowed a lot of other
ages. Do you have the ages of this cluster? Like, do you have an average age of this stuff? Did it skew? Like, was it all old pitchers in that first group?
Yeah, so actually, for the 5 clusters, there wasn't a big difference in age. I don't have the exact number, but the ages were pretty consistent across. That we didn't find that it was a huge difference. This cluster did tend to have a few more of those older pitchers, especially the ones at the end of their career. But the ages surprisingly was not a huge difference in the clusters. So that was the first cluster here. And on the right here, you can see this is our biggest cluster. These are the average pitchers, the good pitchers, and they kind of had to adjust to the pitch clock. Nothing really noteworthy over there. Kevin Gossman, we know he's a good pitcher. Gregory Soto is a average reliever. So nothing too significant for cluster 1, but we really felt we learned a lot from these next 3 clusters here, especially the 2 on the right, which we'll get to. We see on the left there was a pretty similar cluster to the yellow one on the last slide, except they didn't have to adjust to the pitch clock at all. I'm a Phillies fan. I've watched Zach Eflin a lot. He's pretty businesslike on the mound. He doesn't take a lot of time between his pitches, so he didn't have to adjust a lot to the pitch clock. But what we really thought we learned from the clustering were these 2 on the right here, which we called the large adjustment clusters. And on one side, you have the green, the pitchers who adjusted a lot. They used to take a long time to throw, but they reduced their pitch tempo, but they still pitch well. So Devin Williams is a very good reliever for the Brewers. AJ Minter is a good reliever for the Braves. And then you look to the right, same sort of player profile in that, you just want them to throw the ball because they're taking forever. I hate watching them take 3 minutes between pitches. I'm a big fan of this pitch clock, and these guys did not adjust well. Vince Velasquez also, as a Phillies fan, it's been rough watching him for a long time, and Lucas Giolito sort of falling off a cliff here. So yeah, those are sort of the clusters we found. Yeah, so not to dwell on that too much, but so our goal of that was grouping pitchers, and then from that, what can we learn out of these clusters? So our next slide here is going to show we have these clusters. Is that associated with an injury? Is that associated with this apparent spike in Tommy John surgeries that people were really worried about? And it turns out, just based off of our clustering, no. There's no association with the pitchers who struggled. There's no association with the old pitchers. There's no association with just the average Joe. You can see here, everyone's, there's just a few Tommy Johns or rotator cuff injuries or like these severe injuries you can imagine are the extreme, out for a season type injuries here. And just being in a certain cluster didn't make you any more susceptible to this injury. And this was sort of a reason why we wanted to take an even deeper analytical look and see what else we can learn beyond sort of the surface level statistics here. So just our next slide here. I know just from watching this presentation, a lot of the people here are way more intelligent on baseball than just everyone else in our class at GW. But just to remind everyone here, wins above replacement. Wins above replacement. We're going to use these stats in our next statistical model. So I wanted to give a quick refresher here. Wins above replacement is sort of a cumulative, all stats involved number that tells you how many more wins a player contributes to your team as opposed to a replacement level player, which means like a AAA player. So just know if that stat is higher, it means the player is doing well. And then the next two stats, xERA and xFIP, are I think everyone knows what ERA is, earned run average. FIP is fielding independent pitching, so it's ERA but without any plays that involve fielders, so it's like home runs and strikeouts and such. And then what the X means is they use StatCast stats, so they look at exit velocity and launch angle and all that sort of stuff, and based off of that they predict the player's ERA, they predict their xFIP, their FIP, and that's what the X means. So just, you can think of that as ERA and FIP for the sake of this model. And the lower is better for those stats. Walks per 9, how many walks a player allows per 9 innings. That one's pretty straightforward. Obviously, for that one, lower is better. Don't want to be walking players. And then at the bottom there, perceived velocity. Also, you can just think of as velocity. It's a little bit different in that it's what speed the pitch looks like when you're standing in the batter's box as opposed to what the actual pitch speed is. So it's very similar. These are very nuanced little details, but so these are the stats we'll be using on our next slide. So what we did here, what I'm about to show you, is what is called a decision tree. And it's pretty easy to understand if you just follow the rules, which I'll show you right here. What happens is, in this classification decision tree, we are going to imagine a pitcher's at the top, all right? And you make a decision going each direction based off of their actual, performance statistics. And like a Plinko thing, it'll drop them down into the bin at the bottom, predicting, will they get Tommy John? Will they not get Tommy John? Will they get a rotator cuff injury? Will they, be able to keep pitching this season? And this was like a model based off of some Python programming that we did. But we really liked it because we get to show you a picture, and it's pretty clear to understand. And just know that if you see right here, this testing accuracy, that means with data that this model was not made with, it didn't know any of these pitchers beforehand, you can throw any random pitcher in there, and 81.5% of the time, it will predict whether they get an actual severe. So just looking here, we don't need to go into every little detail. We have sort of this path on the right we did want to highlight. And so it starts up there at the top. We talked about xFIP, so just think FIP. And when it says past, it means the years before the pitch clock. So think a pitcher that used to, higher than 4.5 xFIP means a pretty not great pitcher. All right. So think of a bad pitcher in the past. All right. Next attribute here is velocity. All right. So a bad pitcher in the past with a high velocity. All right. Just stay with me here because I'm just throwing a lot of things together. And then also used to take a very long time to throw the ball. So before the pitch clock, this pitcher took forever. They weren't very good, and they just threw the ball really hard wherever. I think we can all imagine that watching our teams. I know, there's some random reliever that comes in the 8th inning and just chucks the ball randomly, and we don't know what's happening. So imagine that kind of pitcher. They actually fell into this category based off of our analysis that they should be predicted to have a severe injury. And that could make sense, you know, they don't have as much recovery time now between pitches. They're sort of wild throwers. They're trying to throw too hard. And this was sort of a theory that we had had before, and seeing the actual analysis sort of prove it into this box here, all the way in the bottom right here. 100% of the guesses that were made in this box to have a severe injury, 100% of those pitchers actually had a severe injury. So we were pretty excited. Obviously, we're not happy these people got hurt, but we were proud that the analysis sort of proved proved this theory. And you know, it's very interesting. You know, people were worried that players could get injured from the pitch clock, but from what Kim mentioned before, this isn't because the pitchers had to adjust to the pitch clock. This is because they adjusted what we could say is almost wrong. They have less time to recover, but they're still trying to throw the ball as hard as they can. Like that kind of guy, obviously, you know, that's not very smart. You should probably change how you do things, because that's what leads to injury. And that's what was predicted for here. So that's it. We're going to talk about with the tree. Obviously, there's other sort of paths you can take here, but that one had to do with the pitch clock itself. Just two more little slides about sort of analytics idea that we had. We just wanted to see if sort of the players on extremes had to do anything with the pitch clock change, because on average, player performance did not really change much, is what we found. So we looked at just the top 25 and bottom 25, sort of in each category. So, you know, we had 300 pitchers. So this is just the best 25 in reducing their ERA actually had, you know, a pretty small adjustment to the pitch clock. And then when you look over to the right here, the largest increases in ERA, so the players who struggled the most tended to have to take to make a larger adjustment to the pitch clock. So it sort of shows that, you know, it's not a big difference, but being one of those players who used to take a long time to throw and used to waste time between pitches did make it a little bit more difficult, but not extremely. And it could have been overcome, but if you didn't overcome it, you were more likely to be one of those players who used to take a long time to throw, if that makes sense. And we have just very similar, another stat. This is the exact same layout here. Instead of ERA, we have walks per 9, sort of the idea, oh, you know, if I have to rush, will I lose my command? You know, is it worth the pitch clock if I can't find the strike zone anymore? And this one shows a similar thing in that, you know, those kind of pitchers who just took forever and made baseball games go 5 hours, even though it was, you know, a 2-0 game. These guys had to make a larger adjustment to the pitch clock, and they struggled. Madison Bumgarner, Urias Familia, they're not great pitchers, and it got worse for them with the introduction of the pitch clock. All right, so this is our analysis. I hope it was clear. Didn't throw too many numbers at you, but Kim can wrap it up. We have a few ideas about what we learned from the analysis.
Scott, this is
Yes.
Richard. We need to wrap up because we've got one more presentation that I need to get in before noon. So
Okay, that's
okay?
fine. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, the data
Nice work.
visualizations and the graphs were really good.
So we sponsor or?
Yeah, we sponsored it. Yeah, we won the.
We got a local grant
remember
that gave
Future of the game.
the future of the game category. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for
thanks.
having us. We're really happy to get to talk to everyone.
Thanks, Scott and the rest. Appreciate you guys. I'm sorry to rush you, but,
No, no
Okay.
no worry. Thank you.
School.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Research project.
Thank you.
Graduating.
Cool, yeah.
let's see if I can get my screen up here.
That's what I'm thinking too, yeah. What, next year, and then you gotta be careful with causation and correlation, you know.
RoboCop behind the phone instead of.
Yeah, yeah. Angel Hernandez.
That's a wrong something.
Oh, I gotta find it.
The spike in severe injuries.
Yeah, you saw that. Yeah, yeah, that was on one of the early graphs. And, yeah, Tommy John, basically.
But that's,
It's a small number though.
I saw, I mean.
oh, 11 to 21, but still it's,
Right, it was noticeable.
oh, yeah. And the other categories, it was just about the same.
Right.
But that's not, but it's hard to pin down if the pitch clock actually caused that, or if it was
Right.
some.
Yeah.
No,
causation versus
I was gonna go with,
Coincidence.
I need to go with, Ian's, presentation. He had
Yeah,
a,
my thing is not essential at all.
where'd I find?
Maybe you download folder?
There it is right there.
No, it's a good.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's see, now I need to get this shared, right? How do I do that?
Hi, pleasant good afternoon, wherever.
Did I lose the,
Thanks for doing all that. It's good.
Oh, yeah.
It's other than the one dude talking to us, I'm assuming that most other people like don't necessarily watch baseball, know baseball.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was interesting.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, there is analytics program, but yeah, so.
I don't know what's happened here. What's this asking?
Yeah, I'm not sure. You got shared on Zoom.
Can you,
It was a classic statistic.
Can you help me
not
get back to where-
necessarily
where I was? Oh,
Yeah, that was-
Baseball Pete fan.
Yeah, it's more, yeah, stats class, yeah.
I think,
I'm not sure how to share it, but you.
well, it should be the same once I,
All right.
I think.
You share. This one? That's your email.
well, go to that one right there. All right, they should be,
This one, Ian?
well, let me
This.
see, there's, I got several, go to this file right
Yeah,
here,
that's. Should be before.
and then there should be a link in there I can get to. Right there,
This one.
yep. Yeah,
Ready?
there we go.
Alrighty.
You can go full screen.
Yep, perfect.
I'm sorry, it takes so long. I apologize.
I've been working on a Colorado baseball history documentary. I've seen hundreds of photos of Shea Stadium, the minor league ballpark in Denver. Unrelated, my mom found a scrapbook of her grandpa Joe Vitter's baseball career. Looking through it, we found pictures of him at Bears Stadium, posing with major league ball players. JoJo played Texas league ball, but really only talked about it when another one of his teammates had died. We didn't understand the photos, and I started trying to put the story together. Zooming way in on the photo led to the connection between the two histories. The search of one story led to another.
How do I get rid of this thing right here?
When Joe Vitter was born in
Sorry.
1911, from the ongoing stories of baseball in his family. His dad, Frank, who was known as Tom, played, as well as Tom's brothers, Jack, Harry, Paul, and Jenny. Their sister Loretta played, and she was married to Oyster Joe Martina, then the champion baseball thrower of the world. Martina's sister was also an award-winning thrower. Baseball connected the family. Tom Vitter met his wife Vivian Juliette while playing on the Jeanette team with her brother. They were married in late 1910 and had Joe shortly after. As Joe later said, everybody in my family but the cat has played professional baseball, and I just followed. JoJo and his brother Drew played for St. Anthony's School and started playing semi-little ball as soon as they could.
That's his grandfather, Drew.
His uncle and Naga, voice for Joe, finally made it to the bigs and was a World Series champ with Washington. He returned to New Orleans the next year. Joe's uncle Jimmy managed a team called the Green Leafs that included Joe, brother Drew, and cousin Buzz. Though they were young, baseball was extremely serious business. In 1926, a feud was started by a player who had been cut from the Green Leafs, George Moore. The next spring, Moore challenged Buzz Vitter to a fight. Moore brought his father and brother along. Buzz brought his uncles Top and Jimmy. The fight turned into a brawl and other family members joined in. Pipes, lead balls, chains, and rocks were used. It ended with Moore's father, Ignatius, shooting Jimmy Vitter in the heart. Ignatius, Top, and Joe were all treated at Charity Hospital, fractured skulls with head injuries. Jimmy's mother was devastated. He was dead at 32. Baseball and family both took on a new meaning. The Vitter family stuck together after the tragedy. Here, playing in 1930, is Joe with his dad Top, brother Mickey, his cousins Buzz, Carl, and Joey Martina. The next year, the team added brother Drew. In 1932, Joe was listed as a prep star alongside future New Orleans Pelican, Larry Gilbert Jr. The next 2 years, Joe played summer and winter leagues in Jeterat, New Iberia, and Morgan City. Sundays were often singing showings. This one featured Joe's dad Top and Uncle Bub and voice for Joe Martino. The Oxford Joe,
They missed the team.
in 1934, they went 5 for 5 in the game, caught the attention of the Pine Bluff judges, and they brought him up in early July. Joe stayed with the team in 1935, holding out for $85 per month. That season, he played against his younger brother Drew, then with the Greenville Buckshot. Joe ended up making the East Dixie League All-Star team, 327 for the season. Before the season was over, Joe was sold to the Chicago Cubs for $1,000. His replacement in Pine Bluff was his cousin, Joey Martini. The youngest Vitter brother, Mickey, was getting attention as well. He was to get a tryout with Greenville, the same team middle brother Drew played with. After playing another winter in New Orleans, Joe went way west, all the way to Catalina Island. William Wrigley owned that, and the Cubs had spring training there for 3 decades, starting in 1921. Joe reported there February of 1936 alongside Charlie Graham, Billy Herman, and others. He injured his right arm, his throwing arm, then impressed the trainer by throwing with his left arm. Unfortunately, a ball hit by his friend, Frank Demery, took a bad hop and busted Joe's lip. The photo made the news, and Joe was made into a headline as the first Cub casualty. Though he wasn't cut, it couldn't have made a good impression. Soon after, the team went on an exhibition tour en route to Florida. JoJo played against Pittsburgh's Paul Winger and Boston's Lefty Grove and Jimmy Fox. Then, JoJo got a hit against the New York Giants and a major league pitcher, either Al Smith or Dick Kaufman. Also playing for New York, future Hall of Famer from Gretna, Mel Ott, who homered in that game. Spring training ended for Joe at the haunted Tutwiler Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama, where Charlie Grimm gave some fatherly advice to 4 players. He laid it on thick and told them he expected to see them the next spring. He paid their way to the Farm Club in Portsmouth, Virginia. Joe's cup of coffee, as he called it later, was over. He kept on and played well for the Portsmouth Cubs in 1936, filling in various positions. Meanwhile, brother Drew was on a streak playing for Cleveland, Mississippi. He went 4 for 4, then 5 for 5. At the end of the season, he was sold to Littleton, the Southern Association. However, during the winter ball game in Bucky, Louisiana, he slid into second and broke both bones in his left leg. The doctor didn't set it properly, and Drew spent the next 15 weeks in a hospital fighting infections and then appendicitis. Friends and family set up benefit games for him to offset the health costs. Pelicans manager Larry Gilbert Sr. and Drew's dad Top Vitter presented a check. Though he kept the leg, Drew would never play again and would walk with the limp. Youngest Vitter brother Mickey stayed in New Orleans and played indoor baseball, winning the championship with family friends. At the end of the season with Portsmouth, Joe finished second in the popularity contest for the first of several times. Then Joe was traded to the San Francisco Seals. Batting after John DiMaggio, Vitter played well, but in April he was traded to the Seals.
Come on.
What?
I don't think they're seeing the video on there.
Wait, say again?
I don't think they're seeing the video.
No, man. How to restore it?
Press play on the bottom left.
The,
Or just press it.
Crosstown Rhinos commission beds. In September, he typically played in San Diego and Vera. The Mission Reds returned to the Hollywood Stars, but Joe didn't figure into the team. In early 1938, Joe's grandmother died and he returned to Louisiana. His uncles Jack and Harry had died in the past 5 years, and the family was changing. His own life was also about to change. All of Joe's family played some form of baseball. Almost 40 years earlier, his uncles Briette and Metairie played with his dad, uncle, and family friend Bob Tarleton. In 1938, Tarleton was business manager of the Texas League's Shreveport Sports and brought Joe Vitter back to his home state by purchasing his rights for the Hollywood Stars. As with every team, Joe Vitter was Shreveport's utility fielder, playing every position except for pitcher and catcher. Smart play, hustle, and crafty base running were his traits. In his first year at the Texas League, he made the All-Star team. He was also runner-up for most popular player and was awarded his first of several watches as consolation prizes. Shreveport started the 1939 season by drawing 6,000 fans to see him play an exhibition game against Noah and the New York Giants. Ott had a triple. Vitter responded with a homer. At the end of 1939, JoJo was given another watch for finishing second in popularity. More significant for me, he had the votes of my grandma Jerry, short for Geraldine, and her mom Bessie. In 1940, Joe started off hot, going 5 for 5 April 8th. Then on April 25th, getting 4 hits and 4 RBI. He made the All-Star team again and was once again eclipsed as the most popular player at the end of the season. The next year would be better. On April 10th, 1941, Joe married Bessie and a new chapter opened in their lives. She was stylish and confident and would forever change Joe's life. Bessie and Jerry began a scrapbook capturing and clipping moments of his career. In July, he was hitting .326 and was named the All-Star team again. Due to the efforts of some fans, probably Bessie and Jerry, Shreveport held a Vitter Appreciation Night on August 28th. The life change also made Joe consider his value. And after the 1941 season, he considered leaving baseball for the security of full-time work at the plant. After a negotiation period, he returned to his utility role for Shreveport for the 1942 season. Again, he provided defensive insurance and clutch hitting for the team. The team got hot, and for the first time, Shreveport were Texas League champs. Being a veteran, Joe posed with a novelty bat from the previous city championship of 1990. Though he's offered a spot on the 1943 team, Joe was again uncertain about returning to baseball with a secure job at the plant the best of the Shea to get out. The ongoing war took the Shreveport option away. On the same day that Joe DiMaggio volunteered for service, Shreveport folded and all players were sold to the St. Paul Saints of the AA American Association. Joe's Shreveport teammate, Salty Parker, was the manager and asked Vitter to go with him. Vitter didn't report the control, but Parker continued to try to persuade him. In May of 1943, newspapers reported that Vitter had decided to call it. As expected from someone born in baseball, although the Shreveport sports were sold due to the war, a new victory league was started in their place, and Joe Vitter was hired to manage and play on the AFO team. The money was better in Minnesota, but he didn't want to leave Bessie, who was enjoying her time in a social group in Shreveport. She had a lot of success with her bowling team at Zeyu. In St. Paul, Salty Parker continued writing to try to persuade Vitter to play for the Saints. Likely, Bob Tarleton influenced the decision yet again. Tarleton, the GM that hired Vitter in Shreveport, was now GM for the Saints, and he must have enticed Joe with more because Joe joined the Saints halfway through the 1943 season. In front of a new team and new fans, Joe again showed his clever play, hustle, speed, and versatility. 1944 was even better. His average ballooned to .370, and he made the All-Star team again, his first time in the American Association. Newspaper coverage had increased in the new city, and photographers often included Vitter in matching shots. This double steal was shown from 2 angles in 2 newspapers. The attendance was very good. This photo shows how much fan interaction has changed. In 1947, Bob Tarleton and Ian hired Joe Vitter, this time for $600 per month. In May, Joe was offered a managing job in the Dodgers farm system by Branch Rickey. Joe turned it down, citing Bessie's health problems. He's released outright for the first time in his career. Dejected, he signed with the Atlanta Crackers of the Southern Association in early June. By July, he's ejected from a game and released. He signed with DeLand, Florida, and goes on a 27-game streak. In 1948, he's hired to manage the team. Though he hit well, he's released in June again and signed with Daytona Beach. He battles for the batting title for the rest of the season. Though he was on top at 352, he eventually finished at 319. In early 1949, his daughter Jerry and husband Jim Rasmussen had their first child and named him Jimmy Joe. Joe and Bessie relocated to Denver to be grandparents. In the spring of 1949, Joe accepted his final managing job in James, Kentucky. Bessie and Joe's parents all visited James. Joe even included his dad in a team photo. In 1950, Joe returned to where it all started. He played one more season in New Orleans with friends and former teammates. Back in Colorado, Joe and Bessie became grandparents again to help raise my mom. Joe did baseball clinics and worked to bring softball to Denver. In 1953, just days after winning the World Series as a Yankee, Joe's former teammate Eddie Lopat brought a barnstorming team to Colorado, then Hawaii and Japan. At the game in Denver, Joe reconnected with Lopat, with players in the Bay Area, Jackie Jensen and Billy Martin, and with some old playing buddies from New Orleans, Lou Kretlow, Mel Parnell, and Dave Philly. Life slowed down. Joe worked at Gates Rubber Factory in Denver for the next several decades. In 1973, he was inducted into the Diamond Club Hall of Fame here in New Orleans. His brother Mickey attended in his place. In 1977, a heart attack took Bessie, and Joe was never again the same fun loving man he had been. He remained close with his daughter Jerry and a growing family in Denver, teaching my sister and I how to play baseball. In 1995, he passed on. When he had talked about his life in baseball, he would look at his old team photos and point out everyone that was dead. I'm so thankful to have his scrapbook and to have researched more about his career in order to bring some of that life back.
Very good.
Yeah. Very good. I'm sorry we didn't do a proper introduction to this. We've got rushed on.
Yeah, I had a
time,
full schedule.
but yeah, lesson learned is don't do more than a couple of presentations.
Yeah. Were they able to see it?
I'm not sure. I don't think,
We can add the link to the.
You can put it in
James,
the
you weren't
chat.
able to see it, James? Okay,
Oh.
sorry, I apologize.
You got the link?
Yeah, cause, my son is. So, when I told him about this, he said, wait, it's in our bloodline? Yeah, he'll be very, I don't know, she'll like it, but he'll be more interested in it.
Go up. Yeah.
It's awesome. Oh, I guess so. Yeah, he's a huge LSU, they go to LSU baseball games. Cool. Yeah, we're going to LSU baseball. She can actually call.
Oh, this is good. There we go.
Yeah, Justin just posted it in the chat room, so if you want to quickly get that before we this thing logs off at noon, I think. So, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I want to say real quick is, can you turn the screen so you can see?
Wait.
I'll just say here. So just yesterday, hey, I'm Ian.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, we met our distant cousin, Drew Vitter, who's in the room here, and he's the grandson of Drew Vitter there that broke his leg. And then down next to him is my mom, Geraldine Doherty, who is the granddaughter of Jojo Vitter. So same generational distance from the brothers of Vitter. And yeah, watch that video there in the chat. You can feel free to put comments on that video. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very well done.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Well done.
So Kyle, we'll have to
Ain't no thing,
catch you
bro.
next time. I did make some copies if you want to
Yeah, if y'all
We can send-
read an awesome article. from
send
Michigan
y'all.
about baseball.
Yeah.
Huh? No. Just, you could just enjoy it.
Then, I was gonna talk about, I have a database of New Orleans high school players who go on to college and professional. And so every year I do an analysis of the current college players, where they came from, which high schools, kind of where they went. And this is,
That's awesome.
here's a.
Awesome.
So I do a little analysis of,
Thank you.
which schools produce the most players and that kind of thing, so. I don't think we need to go through that right now. So I think we're due to stop, at this point. I think it's 12 o'clock. Any further comment or questions? I'm sorry again, folks, for not having the video available. Again, if you quickly will copy that link, you'll be able to see that, that wonderful video. A lot of work put into that, I'm sure. And I'm sure your family's gonna love that, as well, so.
Y'all found scrapbook or something, you said? Oh, really?
Well, when I first got contacted, I think, Ian contacted me in Derby and said, hey, can you find any photos? And we were like, not really. I mean, I think we sent a couple that we were able to find, and then, but he's done a lot of work since.
A lot of research.
A lot of work since to get all of that stuff. I mean, we started with nothing and,
Put on
Yeah.
newspaper.com.
yeah.
A lot of that, I mean, the scrapbook is pretty significant. There's about 200 articles and photos in the scrapbook.
That's amazing.
And
All
then-
those box scores and stuff.
And then I found about, well, there's thousands of things I found online, but roughly 1,500 of those I had saved and integrated into that.
Should make the copy of the scrapbook.
Yeah, yeah, I've scanned everything and that's
Right.
about half.
Use
About half.
the one copy.
Yeah.
Fitting that you're, Zeyu Vitter.
I think that's what they get gold night.
It is. So yeah, was a producer for the Colorado Rockies, TV. Now Vegas Golden Knights hockey. But so, yeah, for a decade I was with the Rockies. And that's what led to this. I did a doc on the history of baseball in Colorado. Found those photos of their stadium with him and didn't understand how that would. Yeah, so then a year of then figuring out how that would have happened. So, maybe ball players that there might be a stadium that been there. So it took a while to put it all together. And I still am.
Maybe put it out on YouTube and, get it
No, yeah.
get it looked at. All right, anything else? I think we're about wrapped up here. Anybody else got a comment, question? And thanks for participating. Again, sorry for some of the technical problems.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, all right, thanks again, Stu. We appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna sign off here, guys. Take care. One of the